I don't think I'm taking too much of a gamble by saying, by doing this, this chief, this potential promotion of our chief in the pinning ceremony. This will probably be the first time a pinning ceremony for a police chief has ever been on Zoom.
Who's putting the pin on him?
Just wait and find out. You'll figure it out. Don't be so jumpy there.
Just trying to wrap it.
Mary Jo, what, you got a cigarette going there? Is that John? You're on mute. You're on mute still, Mary Jo. There you go. All right, 1 minute. Elaine, that Board of Health thing, do we figure what that's going to be? Or are we just going to gloss over that? Or do you want me to speak for at 10,000 feet on it?
It's up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with, but Sean won't be able to make it, definitely.
I think we should skip right over it then. Unless somebody wants to talk about it, but I don't.
Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Go Villanova. All right, so it's at 6:29. In just a moment, we will go to 6:30. There we are. All right, so as a preliminary matter, this is Brendan Tedstone, Select Board Chair. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Coutinho is absent. Mr. Herr.
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah.
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere. Ms. Lafreniere, you are on mute, FYI. We cannot hear you. But we will move on. I saw your lips go, so I know you said yes.
Bottom of the screen, Mary Jo, on the left-hand side.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mr. Kamalu.
Yes.
Ms. Lazarus.
Yes.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond on the affirmative. Some may be here now, others may join us later. So we know that Mr. McAuliffe is not going to be here from the Board of Health. Ross Bilodeau will join us later. Okay. All right. Good evening. This is open meeting of the Hopkins Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials in this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. It will include a public hearing on petition from Verizon and Eversource for the proposed relocation of an existing utility pole near 42 West Elm. For this meeting, Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one of its many channels or platforms. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some of the attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Meeting supporting materials and packets. All supporting materials that have been provided to that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noticed. The public is encouraged to follow along using posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Meeting business ground rules. We are now to the item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct for our business and to ensure adequate, to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker to the agenda. After they conclude with their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, question, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourselves. Not every agenda item will feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford the public comment as follows. The chair will first ask the members of the public who wish to speak to identify their names and addresses only. Once the chair has a list of all public commentators, I will call on each by name and afford 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So Pledge of Allegiance. Before we begin, let's recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brian, that picture of you looked like your pants were halfway down, but it was your elbow. That was perfect. Public forum. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak? If so, please identify yourselves by name and addresses.
Yeah, we're connected up there for some reason.
All right. I don't know who that is, but hearing none. Oh, that was Deegs.
It really is.
You know? Yeah, see.
Connor, I think.
How you
Connor,
feeling
that's
about
you.
this, you know? Oh, it's a blessing and a curse.
I know.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Maria, you were on, not on mute.
She had a 40th.
No. We can only do so much, so. All right, so just give me 1 second here. I'm just gonna go and the select board meeting down here. All right, so Mr. Kamalu, I believe our first agenda item is the police chief. Do you want to take us through that?
Yes, through the chair. Back on April 7th, the select board moved a motion to appoint Joseph Bennett as Hopkinton's next chief, subject to successful contract negotiations. I am.
Hey guys, we're off. Connor's not here.
I am delighted to report to the community that the town has successfully negotiated a contract with Chief Bennett. And at tonight's executive session, the board approved that contract and authorized the chair to execute the contract with the support of Special Labor Counsel Nick Anastasiopoulos. We are all excited that Joe has agreed to accept this position and is going to be Hopkinton's next chief for the next 3 years. We are also excited that Joe is bringing into this position a great deal of social capital. He has been in this community for a very long time. He's very familiar with the opportunities and the challenges that this community faces. Joe has also been a significant contributor to townwide initiatives. And so certainly the community is not only gaining a police chief, but also somebody who is going to be here, present and actively engaged in all the ins and outs of the community. And therefore, at this point, through the chair, I will ask if the town clerk is present now to execute the oath of office when we get to that point, which could be in the next 2-3 minutes.
I believe I heard Mr. Deegan on the line. Mr. Deegan, are you available to us?
Joe,
Connor Deegan, are you not? Screens here, so but so regardless, so Mr. Kamalo, I think we'll probably have to move on for a moment and then circle back to Mr. Deegan when we're done.
Yes, please.
Okay, so so the select board is pleased to formally appoint Joseph E. Bennett III as police chief. So is Chief Bennett available? I see him walking in. There he is with a big smile. So before we go to Chief Bennett for remarks, is there anyone, any member of the board that would like to say anything? I'll start with Mr. Coutinho. You have any comments for this?
Yeah, I'm really happy that Joe accepted the position, and I'm just looking forward to more than just the 3 years of him being on the force and just taking us to the next level. You know, we got the word that we are again the #1 safest community, and I just know that we're going to continue in that position. So, Joe, really thank you very much, and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Mr. Herr?
I just want to add to what John just said. We did get some information today from an organization in Massachusetts that ranks the top 20 or 25 safest cities and towns in Massachusetts. And Hopkinton was, for the second year in a row, the safest community in Massachusetts. So, Joe, you're walking into a great situation. Well, you're not walking into it. You've been there a long time. You're stepping into a new role in a great situation, and we're lucky to have you on board. I'm sorry we're not there with you tonight. This is not what it should be in terms of all of us getting together and saying congratulations face to face, but it's the best we can do. You look really good standing there, I must say. So looking forward to working with you. And thanks again for working out the contract with us. And looking forward to additional years of service with you at the helm.
Thank you, Mr.
Excellent. Mr. Nasrullah?
So I just want to say thank you for sticking around. I think I'd love to see, someone that's homegrown and moves on up in the ranks. It's an honor to have you here. You've worked tirelessly to make our community safe, and I'm glad to see you taking us to the next level.
Excellent. Mary Jo, Ms. Lafreniere?
Hi. I just want to congratulate Chief Bennett, and we worked together for many years on the elite security for the Boston Marathon, and they were great years, and I welcome you aboard as chief. I know from knowing you for so long that you're going to do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I'll put my quick 2 cents in. Chief Bennett, this is an absolute honor for me to be able to be on the board here and be 1/5 of the group that has made the decision to promote you to chief. It's something that you have certainly not taken your job lightly as a Hopkinen police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, deputy chief. This is a true success story, not just for the police department, but for the town of Hopkinton. Anytime you can hire somebody as a police officer to be promoted to sergeant, to lieutenant, to deputy chief, to chief, it speaks volumes for our department, our town, and the leadership that you had, from Chief Lee to Acting Chief Wallace to, I'm going to forget them. I know that we had Chief McRoberts and Chief Flannery and Chief Irvin. I know that those are all the ones that you've worked under. You can correct me if I've missed any, but you are a true testament to what we look for as police officers in the town. And to all the younger guys that have just recently started, take note that the town of Hopkinton does appreciate hard work that you guys do, and we will reward you by promoting as possible. So, I'm seeing a couple of active sergeants here. I see a couple of the old goat retirees. I see Dave Shane. I see Pat O'Brien. I'm looking around, and I don't know if I see anyone else.
Officer Brennan.
I see Police Chief Emeritus Rick Flannery. And the only thing that saddens me is that we, like Mr. Hurst said, that we can't do this live face to face, because this is something that I truly enjoy. I'm big on the I don't know if I say pomp and circumstance, but I think that this is something that, this pinning ceremony is something that I don't take lightly. As I said to you on the phone, when you very politely were trying to skirt the issue and say it's no big deal, this is where you aspired to be from the day one of when you started your criminal justice and your police, your first day on the job, and you will never get pinned again. You have reached the summit and the pinnacle of your career, and I'm glad that it is part of us. So.
He could go to the FBI, and be the director.
So that said, Mr. Bennett, Chief Bennett, I would like to offer you a couple of minutes and go ahead and do some remarks. We're trying to skirt the issue and say it's no big deal. This is awesome. I can hear myself talk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to say that I'm thankful for the board, Flannery, and friends, all the coworkers. I wouldn't be here today without all the support that I'm mentoring and just help that I've gotten over the years, and I'm eternally grateful. And the last thing I just want to say is there's no place right now that I would rather be than here, working besides these great men and women in service to the fantastic community. I've been happy with the community and been welcomed by the community since I got here, and we're here, and we're looking to continue in service in excellence.
That's it? You're going to let me usurp you by the amount of time that I talked, and you're going to do 10 seconds? Come on, you're better than that.
I'm trying to set the pace for the future.
All right, that's good. That's good. So, before we do this pinning ceremony, just real quick, I see some of the people that you've worked with for a long time here. Are there any guys like Pat or Dave, Shane, or any of you guys want to put your 2 cents in and let us know or how you feel?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I'd like to. Oh. I'd like to congratulate Chief Bennett on the work that he put in.
Yeah, everybody unmuted at the same time.
It might have been Mabel.
I think you're on, Pat. I think everybody's muted, so go ahead.
That's a first. I would like to congratulate Chief Bennett. I had the pleasure of working with him for 20 years. I seen him come over and work up the ranks from patrolman to detective to a sergeant to the lieutenant. And he's always done things the right way. And he's definitely the right guy for the job. I was so happy that the Board of Selectmen saw it to hire from within. And, you made a great choice. And I can see him leading this department for many years to come. So congratulations, Joe, and wish you the best.
Thank you, Pat.
Awesome. So I see Dave Shane there. Never wanted to be publicly, happily to be speaking, but we're going to call on him. Dave, why don't you say a couple of quick words?
Thanks, Brennan. Hi, Chief Bennett. Congratulations. You earned it. I think you'll do a great job. And I just want you to know I was hired before you. I had seniority before you. So, but that's all. Congratulations. Inside joke.
That's awesome. Is there anyone else? Chief Flannery, yeah, I see you're on. I don't see your picture, but I see you're on. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
He's muted.
Perfect.
Ah.
Anybody else? Anybody else on that wants to say something?
Hi, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and give Chief Bennett some congratulations on his ascending to this position. I think the board made a great choice, and I'm glad to see that another member of the department has come up through the ranks and will lead the department into the future. And I'm sure it'll be well led. And the best advice I've got for you, Chief, is to rely on your staff. They're the ones who are going to make you look good.
Well spoken, Chief. And, you're another one that we're very proud to say that worked your way up through the ranks from patrolman to chief. So is there anyone else that wants to say a couple of words before we turn it over?
Sergeant McNeil here. I wouldn't mind, unfortunately, I can't shake his hand and congratulate him, but he was one of my first sergeants along with Chuck Wallace on the midnight shift back in 1999. And he taught me a lot that has been teaching me ever since. And I'm glad he's the leader of our department right now.
Awesome. Those are great words. Thanks, Sergeant. Is that it? All right. Yes, sir.
May I make a motion?
I would love for you to make a motion, Mr. Coutinho.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Joseph E. Bennett III to the position of police chief for the town of Hopkinton.
Second.
Okay, so its motion has been made and it has been seconded. Is there any further discussion on the board? There better not be. Yes, Mr. Kamalu.
With your permission, I offer a friendly amendment to the motion that the motion will reference the contract negotiated and accepted tonight.
Good. Okay. So the friendly amendment has been suggested. It has been accepted and has been seconded.
Mary Jo?
Second. Oh, yes.
All right, and I see no further discussion from the board. So board, how do you vote by roll? Mr. Coutinho, your vote.
Coutinho, yes.
Mr. Herr.
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah.
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere.
Yes.
And Mr. Tedstone, yes. So so before we go ahead and formally congratulate Chief Bennett, I believe his wife Wendy is there and will actually place the new badge and do the pinning for Chief Bennett. So take a look. Mr. Falcioni, if you will get your camera ready and remotely take pictures of a remote broadcast so you can remotely put it on your remote website. And as I said in executive session, I think this is definitely the first time that anybody's ever been pinned on a Zoom meeting. So, awesome. That's awesome. So Chief Bennett, from the bottom of all of our hearts, congratulations. We're very proud as a town and as a community to promote you to chief. You've earned every second of it. And Wendy, thank you also for sharing him for as often as you have. And it's just the beginning. We're gonna.
Oh, I know. I know.
There's at a loss for words.
So, yes, lots of clapping there. That's awesome. So is Town Clerk Deegan available to swear Chief Bennett in?
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, Deegs, looking good.
Good mask.
How do you address me? Please, you'll repeat after me. I, Joseph E. Bennett III,
I, Joseph E. Bennett III,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts
to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts
and will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
and will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
And I do solemnly swear
And I do solemnly swear
and affirm
and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform the duties
discharge and perform the duties
incumbent upon me as the Chief Police of the Town of Hopkinton
incumbent upon me as the Chief of Police in the Town of Hopkinton
to the best of my abilities.
to the best of my abilities.
And I do solemnly swear
And I do solemnly swear
to uphold and defend
to uphold and defend
the charter and bylaws of the Town of Hopkinton.
the charter and bylaws of the Town of Hopkinton.
So help me God.
Thank
Congratulations.
you, Connie.
Good. Congratulations, Chief. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, now go get to work. All right. Thank you, everybody. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda items are to, number one, approve the minutes of the 4/7/20 Select Board meeting. Number two, to approve a parade permit for Memorial Day, May 25, 2020, with the understanding that the applicant recognizes that these events may need to be held virtually rather than in person. Number three, accept the following gifts: $600 to the police department from the Hopkins Chinese American Association, $150 ambulance fund gift from Artie and Dottie Pine in memory of Fran Pine, $100 ambulance gift from Michael and Patricia Zepp in memorial of Francis Pine to the ambulance fund, $25 ambulance fund gift from Bill Hamilton and Alice Hamilton in memory of Fran Pine, and $500 by the Fidelity Charitable Fund on behalf of Nate and Michelle Williams Charitable Fund in honor of Richard Rayhill, firefighter Patrick Rayhill's grandfather. And number four, to adjust the terms of three cultural council members, Jonathan Meltzer, Richard Jacobs, and Laura Stacy, whose terms will run from 12/19/17 to 12/19/20. Would any members like to break out an item for a separate vote? Hearing
I'd
none.
like to talk about break out the parade permit.
Okay, Mr. Nasrullah, you are going to break out number two. Let me grab my pen here. Let's see. And I would like to say, I guess I'll break out number three. Mr. Nasrullah, go ahead on number two.
So I know that we have the understanding that this may need to be held virtually. I also wanted to just kind of point out that in the event that it is not held virtually, that we observe, if we approve this, that we approve it with requirements of social distancing and, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yep. So duly noted there, Mr. Nasrullah. Thank you. And so I would like to break out number 3, bulleted point number 2, 3, and 4. Again, I've said it numerous times. Fran Pine is a relative of mine, but more than a relative, he's been a friend and the guy that we will miss more and more as the days go on. One of the greatest people that I or any of you will ever have a chance to meet. So, so Dottie and Artie Pine, Mike and Patty Zeff, and Bill Hamilton, Alice Hamilton, thank you very much. Those donations to the ambulance fund gift account goes to some very, very great training aids that the chief on the fire department has bought. I was able to see them firsthand. So thank you very much for everybody's generosity, and that's all I have to say about that. So I will.
Mr. Chairman, I
Yes.
move to approve all 4 of the consent agenda items.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Coutinho, how do you vote?
Coutinho, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Ted Stone, yes. Excellent. So that all passes. So, so on the agenda, Mr. Kamalu, this has the public hearing. We are still open, so I don't have to reopen it, right? And nor do I have to wait till 7:20?
You are correct on both counts, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So do we have, let me go back to my page here. Do we have Ross Bilodeau? Is he available?
Yes, I am. How are you?
Okay. Hi, Ross. How are you?
Not bad.
Okay. So welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us and for returning on our next meeting.
Sure.
Mr. Kamala, can you kind of bring us up to speed as to where we left off at our last meeting and where we're at right now?
Yeah, through the chair, there was an extensive discussion, or considerable discussion between the board and the applicant regarding the location of the 2 poles that were being proposed. The board expressed concerns from 2 perspectives. Number one, the general aesthetic appearance of having many poles in the area. And then 2, specifically having a pole that was across the street that would have had an adverse impact on the adjoining properties. My understanding is that the applicant then went back to the drawing board and now is going to offer only 1 pole.
So he's not going to have that sistering pole on across the street as a guide. I mean, as a guide pole, encroaching on anybody else's property. They found a way to engineer it so that 1 pole will be the only pole that's there, and they're simply leaving it on that 1 property, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We're just gonna relocate the 1 pole to accommodate the new driveway, and we'll have a push brace on that pole, which will land on the private property, the same property that the driveway will be on.
So when you say a push pole, that would come out. So that push pole will almost act as a V, an upside down V, a brace. So you're encroaching a little bit more on that homeowner's property.
Correct. We'll just be on that 1 private property. We won't have anything across the street.
How does the property owner feel about that push pole being on that?
They agreed to it. We had our engineers go out and have another meeting with him, and that's the option they came up with. Everyone agreed.
So to the people that are here with us on this call, if you can make sure that on your computer on the bottom left, there's a mute button. If you can make sure that that button's muted when you're not talking, because when you do talk, it interrupts the person that should be talking. So if you could just make a note to keep yourself muted until you need to be heard, that would be great. I'm not talking to you, Ross. So, all right. So Board members, do you have anything on this?
I'm good with it as it stands now.
So I kind of lost some of the conversation when you were describing what the push brace is. Am I to understand that it's just kind of a small brace at the bottom of the pole, kind of holding it up like that?
No, it's actually another pole that's the same size that leans up and makes a triangle. So if we had that pole across the street, we could have had a line going across to support the pole going this way. We're not going to have that pole across the street. We're going to have a push brace, bottom land in the private property, and kind of counteracts the forces in a different way.
Okay. And the push brace is on private property, correct?
Correct.
I have no issues.
Okay, so any other board members have an issue?
Since
So-
we asked them to look into this and to see what they could do, and they've come back with a good solution, I'm okay with it.
Okay, I'm okay with it as long as the property owner is actually did agree with it. Yeah. So I know, and Ross, again, this is no reflection of you. I know that you're just a representative of your company. I know of one person in town that when this was done, there were 3 poles on their property with push poles on it, and the property owner absolutely did not approve of it. So this is not a reflection of you. This is, and I'm not. All I'm talking about is this particular item at hand, our agenda item that we're speaking of now. I'm good with it as long as the homeowner and property owner, I'm sorry, is good with it. So as long as the minutes will show that, I don't see anything in our packet that says that the homeowner is for or against it, any type of letter or communication. So as long as the property owner is good. If the property owner is not, then I think that this whole decision would be reversed or neutralized at best. So hearing that, I will, Mr. Coutinho, would you like to make a motion to close the public?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the relocation of pole T.
No, Mr. Coutinho, you have to close the public hearing first.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And I'm sorry, before we vote on that, I did not go to the public. If there's any members of the public who'd like to comment on the petition. Seeing none. Okay, now, Mr. Coutinho, I'm sorry. Now I will request a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to close the public hearing, make a motion to close the public hearing.
And I second that again.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nasrullah. No further discussion from the board. So board members, how do you vote? Mr. Coutinho?
Coutinho, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Nasrullah, yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Mr. Tedstone, yes. So Mr. Coutinho?
If there's through the chair, if there's no further discussion, I'd move to approve the relocation of pole T79 and E79 as detailed on the revised plans.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Again, I'm voting on this based on the understanding that the property owner does not have an issue with this, and that the property owner does, in fact, is in favor of the solution that we've come to this. So by roll call vote, Mr. Coutinho, how do you vote?
Coutinho, yes.
Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
And Mr. Tedstone, yes, based on that. All right, thank you. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our next agenda item, the FY 20 and 21 budget updates. Mr. Kamalu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my update tonight, I will inform the Select Board and the community about our evolving financial situation under the severe economic contraction that is tied to COVID-19. and also offer some remarks regarding the annual town meeting schedule. At your last meeting, April 7th, I reported to you that the town's fiscal year 2020 position was very solid, and that we have substantial uncertainty about challenges that are emerging for fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2022. Our fiscal year 2020 position remains very strong. With just over 60 days remaining in the fiscal year, number one, our cash position is even stronger than it was at my last report. We now have over $59 million in deposits and investments at this time. As to the May 1st property tax collections, by last Friday, the town had collected 95% of the dollars owed on May 1st, consistent with the collections at this point in previous years. This reflects that mortgage companies and most individuals without mortgages are paying their property taxes before the normal due date without taking advantage of the extended payment date. The town side of our enterprise has implemented procedures to defer spending that can be delayed without impacting immediate mission performance and without incurring costs and penalties associated with cancellations or lost significant discounts. We are controlling over time. I'm also reviewing all new hires with a view towards placing them on hold until we understand more about the tempo of the recovery. I'll explain later why this is important. Our colleagues in the school department have shared with me that expense spending is being limited to direct education support and building maintenance only. And the schools have also paused all hiring actions in FY20. Moving on to the fiscal year 2021 situation. It does remain more uncertain. Here's why. The governor's original budget for fiscal year 2021 would have provided us with $8.9 million in local aid. It seems extremely likely that we will receive substantially less than that because of COVID-19. State revenues are very closely linked with workforce employment, and analysts from the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, Tufts University, and the state itself have offered different projections of how much state revenues will decline next year, basically doing so by projecting different tempos for a recovery from high unemployment. If the return to normal employment is swift, the revenue impact will be less. If the return to normal employment is slow, revenue impacts will range from severe to extreme. It all comes down to how quickly employment will recover, and we believe no one can accurately predict that at this time. The middle band of estimates for state revenue loss from credible analysts is in the 12 to 14% range. It is noteworthy that when the state's fiscal year budget was reduced by only 4.4% because of revenue loss during the Great Recession, Hopkinton's local aid was reduced by 9%, about twice the level of the overall budget drop. If the state shares the pain in a similar way this time, and state revenue is down by 12 to 14%, that could equate to a reduction in our state aid of 24 to 28%. To provide a band of outcomes, a 12% loss in state revenue and a corresponding 12% drop in our state aid would be a loss of approximately $1 million for the town of Hopkinton. A 14% loss in state revenue leading to a doubled reduction, as we saw in the Great Recession, could be about $2.5 million reduction for us. Again, this is all dependent on the tempo of the recovery and how the state chooses to share the pain with local communities. By way of illustration, going back to 2010, it must be said that during the Great Recession in 2010, Hopkinton realized a decrease in net state aid for 3 consecutive years and did not recover to the fiscal year 2009 levels until 2018. Again, did not recover to the fiscal year 2009 levels until 2018. COVID-19 will impact our other fiscal year 2021 revenue sources. We are revisiting our tax levy growth estimate, which had been estimating at $2 million, and our estimate on excise tax, which fluctuates with new car sales and other revenues. On the expense side for fiscal year 2021, we are concerned about signs of significant cost growth in our employee healthcare contract and in our general liability insurance expense. Our providers are seeking substantial increases in these costs. On our side, we are working diligently to negotiate the control of these costs. Additionally, we're working to forecast what level of expenses we have to response we might have for our response to COVID-19 that will not be reimbursable by the state or federal government through fiscal year 2021 and beyond. We are also closely examining what the next tax impact on property owners will be as our revenue and expense factors are adjusted. While FY21 is a challenging budget year, we also have some tools available to us. Number one, under the direction of the Select Board, staff and Town Council have been working to accelerate collection of funds due, or as some will say, overdue, to us under the host community agreement with legacy funds. And those funds could provide additional relief for school and public safety spending in FY21. Number two, over the years, our stabilization funds have grown to approximately 3.6 million for operating and 312,000 for capital. Those funds were only off 3.5% during the COVID market downturn as a result of our conservative investment strategy for stabilization. Again, as we have said in the past, this is precisely the kind of situation that stabilization funds are designed to help with. And we are evaluating the reasonable application of those funds to help us through this emergency. The judicious use of some stabilization funds in FY21 could help us sustain operations while mitigating tax impact during a time of significant hardship in the community. Third option, the Commonwealth has authorized towns to operate with monthly budgets approved by the Select Board and Department of Revenue if town meetings cannot be held before July 1st. Subject to further guidance from the state, there may be merit in operating under monthly budgets through September, with a town meeting in the third week of September to pass an annual budget. We will know much more about the tempo of the recovery by then, and the picture of state aid and our other revenue elements would be much more clear. We think this approach could work well for the town side of the enterprise. But this approach could create problems for the schools who need some level of certainty on funding to decide about any new teacher hires before the school year begins. Working with our colleagues in the school department on this question, we will keep you informed about this option. Fourth option. Preliminarily, the state has authorized the carryover of free cash balances available at the end of FY20 for immediate appropriation in FY21. Next option, the Commonwealth is also looking at additional options for expanding flexibility for towns. One proposal would allow towns to run operating and revolving fund deficits in FY21 to be covered over 2 or perhaps more future years. This is similar to what we have had in place for snow and ice expenditures. And finally, there are also preliminary discussions of a proposal that would let select boards authorize tax levies in excess of the 2.5% limit without an override vote. To recap the fiscal year 2021 situation, we are looking closely at our estimated revenues and are revisiting the spending plan we prepared in March. We are also looking at how new state flexibilities and one-time funds available to us might help us work through FY21 while sustaining critical town services, including education and public safety. Compared to many other communities, we're well positioned to respond to this crisis because of the prudent and fiscally conservative actions we have taken in past years. In closing, I need to note that we are also looking past FY21 to FY22 and beyond. As the professional staff considers recommendations for managing through this emergency, we are very mindful that many of the options we have available to us for FY21 will generate their own challenges in future years. Specifically, paying for recurring costs from one-time funding sources such as stabilization funds, host community agreement funds, free cash from early certifications, or relying on deficit spending if it is authorized would put us further behind at the start of FY22. In that light, we're looking at a multi-year strategy that preserves enough one-time funding to carry us through to a sustained post-COVID-19 recovery. I will continue to work with professional staff across the town enterprise and with the budget advisory group to manage through this challenging situation. And together, as we've done in past years, we will come through. I will continue to provide you with regular updates as that work continues.
Thank you, Mr. Cavallo. That was certainly very insightful. I appreciate it and appreciate you and everybody in town hall kind of muddling your way through this uncharted territory that we're living through right now. So thank you again. Any board members have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Brian?
Couple of things. One, town meeting, I'm not sure if and when we'll be holding that in June. If not, obviously we'll be doing it based on public health concerns. Even if we do, this should be a town meeting, in my view, that's about emergency and financial articles only, and not a 3-night, routine town meeting with all kinds of various articles on there. So I think we need to talk about that with town council, how we figure that out. That would be my suggestion as one suggestion. Secondly, and I appreciate everything Mr. Kamal is doing with the team specific to the finances for not only this year, but for next year, and it sounds like for 22 as well. But I do think that the board should take a formal vote to put a hiring freeze in place for the town of Hopkinton. If 85% of our contracts or obligations are payroll related, now's the time for the citizen group, us, representing the citizens of Hopkinton, to put that freeze in place so that we know why we would need to hire anybody else in these difficult financial months ahead. I just think that we should formalize that. I know Mr. Kamala mentioned it, and I trust he's all over it, but I just think it's important that a freeze goes into effect. We did it in 2008, 2009, somewhere back then. It worked, and it helped everybody understand where we are. And I think it's important we do it now too.
Mr. Hurd, to your point, when you say a hiring freeze, does that mean that every single, and I was not part of the board in 2008, 2009, so this is kind of uncharted territory for me. Does that mean a hiring freeze that every hire that happens now until the freeze is done goes through the Board of Selectmen? Or do we designate to Mr. Kamalo, or is the straight up the answer no?
A hiring freeze would be just that. We would freeze hiring in the town of Hopkinton. If that freeze needed to be overridden for whatever reason, if it was a public safety position, something like that, it would have to come to the Board of Select Board before anyone could proceed with the interview process and the appointment process.
Okay.
So it's not that we couldn't hire somebody if we needed to, but the Select Board would have a say as to whether or not that's something we would do, at the time it was presented to us, or we would encourage people to put it off until better economic days ahead.
And that would be for any person that is drawing a salary from the town of Hopkinton.
That would be for any person that we put on the payroll for the town of Hopkinton, excluding the schools, whom we don't control those purse strings per se after budgets are set. I'd encourage the schools to do the exact same thing. And I heard Mr. Kamala say that our colleagues on the school side are in fact looking at all positions right now for not only this year, but for next year as well. But obviously the schools have a different situation with hundreds of kids coming in. There's gonna be a different situation that has to play out there most likely. But I know our colleagues, if we do what we need to do for all the departments that work with us, I'm sure our colleagues in the school committee will look at the same scenarios.
Mr. Kamalo.
In terms of how a hiring freeze might work, I think I do agree with Mr. Hay. I remember when I joined the town in 2009, what we had in place was similar, whereby we will specifically identify positions that are frozen, and that if there's any new hire that is being proposed, that we will go to the select board and request that the hiring freeze be lifted for that position and provide the rationale for doing so.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, yeah, the numbers that Mr. Kamala was putting forth are just quite sobering. And to Mr. Hur's point, we got to do whatever we can now to head off some of the scenarios that Mr. Kamala was running through. And it's a small point because we don't know how many hires there would be, but it at least starts the whole proceedings.
Okay, Mr. Kamalo, I just sent you a text, and I'd like you to kind of answer that text before I move any further. I don't know if you can see that or not. All right, Mr. Nasrullah or Ms. Lafreniere, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Mr. Hur is saying makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and until we have some type of news as to what we can expect. It's really hard to plan. So I think kind of taking a step back and slowing or freezing hiring, at least taking a look at what we're doing, makes a lot of sense to me. So
Okay.
I also agree. We have a very uncertain future for the moment. And the more we can do up front to make the pain easier to go along into the next year or so, it's the best thing for the town.
Okay. Mr. Kamalo, are you in process of answering that text?
Yes, I can. This is actually in relation to clarifying the actions taken on the school side relative to FY20. What has been communicated to us is that the schools have also paused all hiring actions in FY20. This does not relate to FY21.
Right. Okay. So I can't imagine that. And I mean, why would anybody, especially the schools where they're essentially shut down, why would they need to hire anybody? So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay. So Mr. Hurd, did you make a motion?
So, Mr. Chair, I move that the select board institute an immediate hiring freeze for the town of Hopkinton in order to override the hiring freeze. The positions would need to be submitted to the town manager's office and the select board for review prior to any interviews or offers being made for any positions in the town of Hopkinton.
I'll second that.
So for clarification, does that include any positions that are in the queue at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why it's immediate.
Okay. Thank you. So we've had a motion and it was seconded. Is there any further discussion?
If I may, through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Am I to believe that his motion included the language, or rather, he intended to mean that before the positions are advertised?
Before they're advertised and before anyone interviews are conducted. Yeah, before we start going down the path and getting people interested with us, we don't have a position right now.
through the chair, for further clarification, I mean, I think when we talk about a hiring freeze, I mean, I wonder about labor law and people who have been interviewed and offers have been made, that we're not including those people in our hiring freeze, are we?
Mr. Kamalo, are there any people that have job offers extended to them at this point that we're waiting on their answer that this would impact?
I don't believe so. I'm assuming that, yes, I'm assuming that the hires that we made recently of, I think, the several firefighters that we hired, there were also 3 police officers that we hired. Due to the COVID, both groups cannot attend the academies. I believe those are excluded from the freeze.
Okay, and I also feel that, so if that did need to be relooked at, this isn't an open and shut case. This does give the Board of Selectmen and the town manager some the ability to look at it at a case by case basis.
Yeah, they would come before us, right? To the chair.
Any further discussion?
Again, through the chair, so Mr. Hurd, is this, the discussion we just had, is that all reflected in your motion?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
Okay. All right, hearing no further discussion, how do you vote, Mr. Coutinho?
Coutinho, yes.
Mr. Hur?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Mr. Tedstone, yes. Okay, so that carries. Thank you. So, Mr. Kamalo, does that kind of sum up the budget updates?
Yes, that does.
All right, so-
In terms of the scheduling of town meeting, we are going to continue our conversations with our colleagues in the school department, and we will provide any updates to the board.
Okay. So-
Yeah, through the chair, I guess got one question, still sticking on budgets. You know, when I was the liaison to Parks and Rec, and I know, Mr. Kamalo, you know about this, that they're quite nervous about the revenue that they normally get from Sandy Beach and the other programs that they have during the summer, most especially the camp. And if they don't see those revenues, that they may run into some shortfalls. I'm just wondering if we're able to help out Parks and Rec.
Yes, through the chair, Mr. Coutinho, that issue has been brought to my attention. I had a telephone conversation with the chair of Park and Rec and the director of Park and Rec Services. At this point, I now need to engage at the staff level with everybody impacted by this, or everybody who can contribute to the conversation, and then we'll settle back to the chair of the Park and Rec Commission with some possible solutions.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I brought that up.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we did not discuss, after I suggested it, how we're gonna look at articles for this town meeting coming up, whether it be in June, late June, or if it goes into September sometime, in terms of just money and emergency articles and not routine stuff that takes hours on end.
So when you say that, Mr. Herr, I know that we're looking to look at strictly emergency items, things that we absolutely have to do to keep our town rolling, and not the additional auxiliary things. So who do you suggest draws the line of what is what? Is it the town manager? Is the town manager and us? Is it?
It's my understanding, it's the governor's, when the governor put forward some municipal legislation here recently in the midst of the crisis, that was addressed, and it would be the select board that determines the articles that go forward that are emergency and financial.
Okay.
That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but something like that I think is out there now.
Yeah.
Through the chair. At the last meeting, I had made a suggestion that we just do those articles and that we move zoning and everything else to a fall town meeting or another town meeting. And at that time, I think they said it was all or nothing, that we couldn't do that. So there is new legislation that's going to allow us to break out these articles from a town meeting.
If I may, through the chair. If I may, I think you're both correct in the sense that there is talk of some legislation that could be coming down the pike. That has not happened. In terms of Mary Jo's comment, you're also correct. Per the town charter, remember, the warrant was opened. People submitted articles. The only way those articles can be removed from the warrant is by their consent. So if the board is inclined to narrow the focus of the town meeting, we'll then have to consult with the proponents and encourage them to perhaps suggest that no action be taken on their articles.
Yeah, so I think that even like you said, Mr. Kamalu, even if that legislation did go through, there'd still be a need to vote no action at town meeting, correct?
Correct. That could be one of the options.
Okay. Okay. So, Mr. Kamalu, I believe you are up next with the town manager's report. Mr. Herr, are you satisfied with that answer, by the way?
Yeah, for now, we'll figure this out, but people have to understand that this is going to be a moving and developing process for all of us, not only here in Hopkinton, but across the state. I mean, think about trying to get 150 people in the middle school gym for 3 nights in a row to go through 60 articles. We're not going to get on. I don't want to go there for 3 nights if it's the middle of June and we're still on the downward side of this thing. A lot of other folks aren't going to want to do that either. So we just have to figure all that out, but I think we're good for now.
Okay. Mr. Kamalu, town manager's report.
Yes. I have a couple items on the town manager's report, starting with,
And Mr. Nasrullah, I know that you have to leave at 7:45-ish. So if you want to jump in and give us any liaison reports, if you've had any, and if not,
I have none. It's only going to be a minute that I'm away at
Okay.
7:40 in 2 minutes.
okay, thank you. Carry on, Mr. Kamalu.
yeah, Main Street Corridor Project. On February 25th, 2020, the Select Board established the aggregate compensation amount for this project. Followed up with on April 7th, 2020, the board voting to dedicate the Main Street Corridor Project easements. And then right after that, Town Council filed the easement plans at the Registry of Deeds. We are still waiting to hear back from the Registry of Deeds on the recording of those plans. Tonight, I'm respectfully requesting that the Select Board consider the form of notices of taking and authorize the town manager to send notices of taking to all affected property owners once the order of taking has been recorded and filed with the Registry of Deeds. And
Okay.
also to approve the form of the access agreement and accompanying cover letter to those property owners that require improvements to their electrical services. The draft access agreement and the letter forms were included in your packet. Other highlights, we're continuing micro level discussions with property owners at 2 West Main, 81 Main, 93 and 95 Main, as well as 48, 52, and then 61 Main Street. We are anticipating to submit the plans, specifications, and estimates to Mass DOT first week in May. We're also coordinating with the BAA to finalize the start line anchoring system for the overhead system. And then last but not least, the arborist will be working with VHB and the town tree warden to evaluate all trees to be protected during construction.
Okay. Good, so you need a motion on that, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Coutinho, do you have a motion on the town manager report?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Select Board vote to approve the form of notices of taking and authorize the town manager to send notices of taking to all affected property owners once the order of taking has been recorded and filed with the Registry of Deeds.
Nicely put. Is it seconded by anybody yet?
Second,
All right, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So we're going to go ahead and do this notice. Mr. Kamalo, has there been any discussion coming out of the state or our friends at the Federal Department of Transportation specific to the project, the funding, things like that? I mean, obviously, this project is being funded in large measure by the state and federal transportation entities, and the citizens have already appropriated its share. But have you heard anything about those monies being at risk in any way, shape, or form?
At this point, no. In fact, what we heard was that Mass DOT is looking at increasing its contribution to the construction of the project. The number that was mentioned was that their contribution will go up from 8 million to 11 million.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Coutinho, how do you vote? Mr. Coutinho? You still with us?
Coutinho, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Herr?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
And Mr. Tedstone says yes. Thank you. Mr. Kamalu?
Yes. Moving on. I'm requesting and recommending to the board to renew the Hopkinton agreement with the towns of Ashland, Holliston, and Medway to provide veteran services to the named member towns through the Metro West Veteran Services District.
Okay.
As you know, this is a regional partnership that has been in place since 2011. The district is staffed by a director, agent, and a clerical position, whose primary duties are to process the Chapter 115 benefits for veterans. Central office started in Ashland. It's now located in Holliston, with the staff providing office hours in each of the participating towns. Most recently, together with our fellow town members, district established a $75,000 emergency fund to cover veteran needs not paid for under Chapter 115. I can safely say that were we not part of this, if Hawkinton was not part of this regional district, we may not have been able to access this emergency fund. Under this agreement, Hawkinton will pay and has paid in the past years an annual assessment to the district to cover personal and expense budgets based on population. This assessment is projected to be approximately $45,000 in FY21, down from $46,000 in FY20. If Hawkinton was to establish its own veterans department, the town would be required to hire at least 2 staff and carry a higher expense budget. And it is on that basis, and also given the quality services we've been receiving through the district, that I recommend to the board to renew the agreement.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. Thank you, Mr. Kamalo. Do you need an action from us?
Yes, I do. There are 2 components to the vote. One would be renewing the agreement, and 2, designating the town manager as the representative, the town's representative on the board.
Okay, anyone want to make a motion to that? Do I need a motion or?
We do need a motion.
Okay. Mr. Hurd, can you make that motion?
I'll move the
I have
motion.
a question.
John,
Mr. Coutinho, go ahead with the motion.
Can I ask a question through the chair?
Let us just, let's do the motion first and then we'll have discussion.
Okay.
Right. I'll move the motion that's as stated by the town manager.
Okay.
second.
Okay, now Mary Jo?
Second.
No.
Well, my question was about who we have to represent the town at this veteran services. Is it a veteran or is it the town manager?
The bylaws, district bylaws identify the select board or its representative. And in the past year, it has been the town manager.
Just want clarification, that's all.
All right, I'm sorry, Mary Jo, my attentions were elsewhere. Are we ready for a vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Coutinho, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Hurd?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
Mr. Fernier?
Yes.
And Mr. Tedstone says yes, so that carries. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Back to the Main Street Corridor project, I believe the town manager is seeking a second motion specific to the electrical access or the access agreement for electrical service.
Yeah, there's one, on the electrical service. If through the chair, I have a motion for that. I move that the select board vote to approve of the form of access agreement and a company cover letter to those property owners that require improvements to their electrical service to connect the new underground utilities and to authorize the town manager to send the draft access agreement to those property owners.
Second.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kamalo, has town council reviewed both this access agreement form letter as well as the letter we talked about a moment ago in the notices of taking?
Yes, all those documents have been reviewed by town council.
Thank you.
Okay, no more discussion? Okay, Mr. Coutinho, how do you vote?
Coutinho, yes.
Her?
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah?
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere?
Yes.
Mr. Tedstone says yes, so that carries as well. Thank you very much there. And we are at, let's take a look here. Liaison reports. Mr. Kamal, you all done with your town manager report?
I'm all set. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You got it. Liaison reports. Mr. Coutinho.
I gave her one from the Parks and Rec. The only other one is, I was just wondering how we were doing with the lease agreement with the 26.2 Foundation and the International Marathon Center, if we're making any progress on that, so we can get ready for town meeting, whenever town meeting is.
Yeah, through the chair, quick answer. Two part. First being, I understand there was progress made in the discussions between 26.2 Foundation and Park and Rec, and that understanding will be reflected in the lease agreement. Second part to that is, my understanding now is that Town Council is speaking with the legal representative of 26.2 Foundation, and the questions or points of clarification will come up in the lease negotiations.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Herr, any liaison reports?
Two quick reports. I serve on two other public boards here in Massachusetts, the MWTA Regional Transit Authority Board, as well as the Framingham State University Board. Both these public entities, their revenue streams are crashing through the floor. The state aid expected to be coming to them, is crashing through the floor. At any level, at any public entity in Massachusetts right now, they're all looking at the same challenges that we're looking at. And we've had a couple of meetings specific to special meetings for these two other boards alone, specific to finances alone, and the challenges that are coming, to put it politely and optimistically. It's pretty scary out there right now. So Hopkinton, we're going to do our best, obviously, to weather this as well, but we're not alone in this by any stretch.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Herr. I will absolutely agree with you that the economic devastation has the potential to be very massive. However, in the line of work that I do, I will say that right now, the massive loss of human life and everything that's going on is absolutely gut-wrenching. So yes, I definitely agree that fiscally it's going to be tough, but there's 14 pages of people that just passed away on Sunday in the Globe on those obituaries. So it's a very tough and scary time financially, as well as the general public health. So, but we as a very strong and noble community will get through it together.
Yeah, we take care of each other.
Mr. Nasrullah, liaison report?
I have none.
That's right. I already asked you that, didn't I?
You did.
I'm trying to stretch the meeting out. That's what I do. I like long meetings.
Yeah.
Mary Jo.
I don't have a liaison report, but I do have a comment on the letter received April 8th from Smith, Costello, and Crawford. And it looks like they're still intending on having their virtual community outreach meeting on the marijuana establishment on South Street. And there's a link there and a phone number and an ID. And I just want to make sure that somehow we check on them to make sure that they get this information out to the public as much as possible through all of the media outlets that we suggested to them, so that the community can participate in this. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mary Jo. And my liaison report is nothing. So any future board agenda items?
Mr. Chair, are we going to be getting an update tonight from the Board of Health, so specific to the health department, specific to COVID-19?
Yeah, I also look forward to that.
Yeah, so Sean was unable to make it. So we kind of elected to just kind of not talk about it. I can kind of jump in if you guys have any questions. I can't speak to the everything that's going on exactly in Hopkinton, but if you have any questions, I can answer them to the best of my professional knowledge and of of what I'm doing for a living. I'm pretty in tune. I have daily meetings and conference calls with the DPH and CDC and the Board of Health in Framingham and Natick. So if you have any questions or anything like that, I'd be glad to kind of take a
I'm
stab
not
at it.
sure you can, I'm not sure you can answer this, but do we know if there's been any new cases in Hopkinton since our last meeting?
There definitely
yeah.
have. There definitely have. There's one facility in town that had, I believe, 37
Yeah, 37.
patients and 11 staff members. And I heard unofficially through the grapevine that we had 2 people pass away last night
Oh my God.
at that facility.
Chair,
In fact, if I,
an email from the health department, literally as we're sitting here during this meeting. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but as of 4/28/20, Hopkinson's health department is reporting 92 total confirmed COVID-19 cases. 68 of those cases are active with 18 recoveries and 6 deaths.
Oh, 6 deaths.
So, yeah. So I know that we had, I believe it was last Thursday, or maybe 2 Thursdays ago, we had a facility in town that had 1 case, and then it just absolutely exploded, and it went to, I believe, a total of like 52 cases. So, people talk about the surge, and the surge is here and it's not here, and there's no way to quantify if the surge is here or not without 4 or 5 days of good data. We don't know if the surge is here right now, if we're on the upswing or downswing from the surge. And yeah, those 92 cases, just imagine how many of those cases we would have if we didn't do all this social distancing and have everything shut down. So it's real. It's very real. It's scary. It's upsetting. But we have some great people. Our Board of Health is absolutely phenomenal, and I know that I go back and forth with Casey quite often, asking her questions and getting her input and implementing that on a much more regional basis than just Hopkinton. So she really is a phenomenal employee that we have with the town. Very proactive and very knowledgeable. Fire Chief Slammin has certainly had his finger on the pulse of everything that's been going on as well. But it's, you'll see New York has less cases, or California has less cases, but it doesn't mean anything with Hopkinton, and it doesn't mean anything with Massachusetts. I'd like to give a lot of credit to our governor for shutting it down as best as he can. He extended it today from May 4th to May 18th as a starting point. I don't know if that's going to be a hard line either, but those 6 deaths, we knew of, I only personally knew of the one that was in the paper the other day, and then I know of 2 with 1 additional probable today from Hopkinton. So I don't know. It's a very scary thing, and wearing a mask and washing your hands and coughing into your chest, into your elbow, and doing all those safety precautions are things you absolutely have to do. So
I know we're all getting stir crazy, but it's working.
yeah.
So I think it's,
Yeah, like one of the things when I started working in the geriatric population is one of the comments that these guys and girls would always make is, it sucks to get old. And my response to them is, what's your alternative? So, as long as we sit here and we follow to the letter of what the CDC and DPH are telling us to do, and we do it to the best of our ability, it will slow the spread. And I think that most of the people that are here on this call tonight, I don't know where you guys stand health wise, but if you're not immuno or respiratorily compromised, The COVID flu is probably not going to take your life, but it certainly may take your mom's or your dad's or your grandparents, or a friend. And it's, I think it's pretty selfish to kind of overlook some of these things that have been put in place by the experts that know what they're doing. So I like seeing, go to Dunkin' Donuts and you see everybody in a mask and observing the 6-foot social distancing. And I believe it was Mr. Falcione months and months ago having Mr. Deegan and I do, instead of a high five, he saw us do a high elbow. So we started our social distancing way back then, and we're moving forward. So please, by all means, follow what the experts say, and shelter in place as much as you can, and maintain your social distancing, wash your hands, cover your cough, and enjoy your time with your families.
By all means,
Families.
by all means, don't inject disinfectant.
Well, you actually can.
Oh.
Disinfectants. Mr. Nasrullah, to your point, ozone is a disinfectant that's been used very, very satisfactorily in cancer patients. So you absolutely, I don't think they sell a home kit for that, but there are physicians out there that would very readily inject said disinfectant into your lungs. But stay away from the bleach aisle.
Mr.
All
Chair,
right.
if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
There's a wonderful, heartwarming initiative that was started by the library department. It's called Show Us Your Heart, Hopkinton. In these trying times of social distancing, our hearts are what connects us to our families, our friends, and our community. So what you'll see is this.
Show us your hat.
We're going to be putting this on the windows at Town Hall.
Awesome.
I've seen some in the windows.
And
Norman, good job drawing that.
and just one last thing,
That's all put this in the library. Yeah.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, so there's been a few people that have approached me. And so Kelly Karp and her daughter Emily, they took it upon themselves and they sewed a whole bunch of cloth masks for us to use at my facility to give at no charge. They shouldered all the costs to this, and I mean lots and lots. I have upwards of 103 residents, and they made me masks for my residents to keep them safe. And the same thing, there's another girl in town, Sandy Nobolini, who did the same thing. And there's a group down in Legacy Farms who did the same thing. They gave us masks, they gave us gowns, they gave us face shields, and even my neighbor, the Linares here, they brought over 30 or so muffins to give to our staff. So, if you're out there, go over and say, if you see or if you have it in your heart, write a note, bake a cake, do something, give it to the cops, to the fire, to the DPW, to everybody who's first responders, to people down at Golden Pond who are knee deep in this, or anywhere. It's a good time for our community to come together, and those small things that you take as small, when you're knee deep in all this stuff, it goes a real long way. Whether it's a card signed by your kid or a bunch of cupcakes made by your neighbor, all of it is it goes a long way, and it's much appreciated.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add that just this morning, my wife was on call all night, and Milford Hospital ran out of gowns, so I scrambled and got the bunch today. But if people do have extra masks or gowns or ponchos and that stuff, our local hospital really could use them. They do run out of PPE, and just like you did at your facility, they do run out of PPE. So if people do come across stuff, I can help organize it like I've been doing. But this, just contact the hospital for me to donate anything.
Yeah, hospital. Golden Pond, they could certainly use any of your donations that you have for PPE as well. They're in a tough spot as well. Like, who would have thought that it would have hit a place like that really as hard as it has? And and that's, we talk about acting locally. That's as local as it gets. So any questions on donations or anything like that can go to Mr. Coutinho, go to Mr. Kamalo at the town as a town manager, and send me an email or text, whatever you need. But very rarely will a donation and something from someone's heart be denied, and it will be appreciated more than you know.
Mr. Chair, if I may add to donations,
Yes.
the Ramona family donated homemade masks to our DPW workers.
That's awesome. Thank you very much to them.
I just want to say thank you for mentioning Sandy Nobolini. I have her masks. She's given me a couple of masks for myself.
Yeah, I think she made 50 or 75 for my facility. So, and same
Made
thing
a
with
lot.
the carps. It's and they wouldn't take any type of financial payment for that. So it's just good stuff all around.
Just one more small thing I wanted. I've been talked to by that right here in Walcott Valley, we've had a coyote problem because we back up to the state park. So that's not really a surprise. But there are also some fox out here. And, with the quietness of the downtown at night, and the streets now are so much more quiet than they used to be, it does seem like some of the animals are coming out of hiding or coming out of the woods or wherever they are. And so I'm just warning people to be careful and watch when you're walking your animals out there.
Ms. Lafreniere, to your point, I saw the other day there was a thing, I think it was down by Walcott Street. There was a big thing of
Yep.
bird seed with an anvil over it. So that's a good way to take care of coyotes.
Okay.
Or you can paint a tunnel in a rock.
This coyote has been around for quite a long time. This coyote, I've seen him. He's been around for a couple of years, and he's a blonde or a very light coyote. So he kind of looks like a golden retriever or a dog until you really, see his snout and take a good look at him. And we've lost a lot of cats and things like that around here lately. So
Yep.
people keep their eyes out. That's all.
So you would almost denote him as a wily coyote.
Yes, exactly. Very wide.
Okay. Mr.
Oh.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
I'm gonna second that.
All right. Any
Second,
further
Mr.
discussion?
Kamalo?
Before we go down any further.
I just wanted to say to Mr. Kamalo, nice dashiki.
Well, thank you.
It looks good.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and it's seconded. Any further discussion? No, hearing none. All in favor, Mr. Coutinho,
Coutinho, yes.
her,
Yes.
Mr. Nasrullah,
Yes.
Ms. Lafreniere,
Yes.
Ted Stone, yes. Good night.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone. Thanks for coming.